we'll call the Historical Commission to call the meeting to order. And Brendan, can you read off a list of names so that we can acknowledge who's here?
Certainly, I will call roll. Pamela?
Yes.
Bob?
Here.
Andrea?
Here.
Nick?
Here.
Melanie?
Here.
Alan?
Here.
All right, we got roll. We got a quorum.
Okay. Okay, moving right along. The first item on the agenda was approval of the July minutes. If everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes from July, does anybody have any additions, deletions, or any comments to make on what has been distributed to you? Hearing no comment. Go ahead, Brendan.
No, I was going to say I make a motion to approve the July minutes.
Second.
Minutes have been motion. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Well, we got to do the one down the line, Bob.
Individually? Okay.
Yeah, that's the COVID rodeo.
Okay.
Pamela?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Melanie?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
And I also vote yay.
Okay, so the minutes have been approved and I'll send them off to get published appropriately. Second item on the agenda is correspondence and communications. And as I said, I recall the last time we were together, we assumed that all we were going to talk about was the historic preservation review period, and there was going to be nothing else to talk about. And the last thing I said was, that's probably what we'll put down on the agenda, but I'll tell you, something will come up within the 30 days, and within 24 hours of us meeting tonight, I think 3 items have come up. Let's just run through what's happened so far. There's been, Pamela, do you want to address what's happened down at Maplewood Cemetery? Just to the group, what's happened?
Yeah, as far as I know, and I haven't been down to Maplewood Cemetery, but there is a monument there to those who died in the Spanish-American War. There has been, someone has done some damage to the monument and they've removed one of the plaques. The veterans people would like to replace that, and they're wondering if there's anybody who has any photos, any historical photos of that monument and what it looks like. I sent an email out to everyone earlier simply because I was afraid that I wouldn't remember long enough because, you know, I'm old. And I don't expect anyone to show up with pictures tonight, but if you have any, or if you have any leads on any, if you could contact Gary Brown or contact Robert or myself, we would be more than glad to pass the information along.
Absolutely.
Hey, Pam, did you think, sorry, Pam, did you think of asking Paul Polowasek? Because he's got a ton of...
You know, the oddest thing is I talked to Paul this morning about another matter, and I completely forgot. Lynn seems to feel that Ann Forbes may have had something, okay, but I'm not finding it. But I'll get in touch with Paul.
Okay, you have his phone number?
Yes, okay. Unfortunately I do. Alan.
Okay.
Right. And I've already gotten in touch with, or at least by email, the Historical Society, and they've got to have a file on monuments. I don't know if they have photos of monuments, but they have to at least have a file that lists names.
Would the cemetery have anything where it's in Maplewood Cemetery?
I'll call it Mr. Urato. Find out. I could do that. Okay.
Just a suggestion. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So we will pursue that in our own individual ways. I don't think there's anything that the Historical Commission has to do as a group, but in our own individual ways, we can sort of plug into their needs. All right, so that's the item that came up within 24 hours. Gary Brown called me yesterday, former chair of the Marlborough Historical Commission, and mentioned that the parking lot that's being put up across the street from the former school department on Washington Street, the Freeman Building, that empty space that's been made into a parking lot. Gary is informing me, I just found out today, that the corner house on Francis Street is also part of that piece of property that the city now owns. And that's going to be taken down, that little house that used to be, I think there was a store in there. That's going to be taken down and be made also as part of this parking lot across from the school system in the early childhood people in that building across the street. Well, I mean, he brings it out to me and he mentions specifically to me, well, what about, wouldn't that be a great place to move the John Rowe home to, that little corner plot? It would fit nicely in that little corner plot. And I said you brought it up, and I would raise it with the Historical Commission, and I'll let it be recorded that we raised the issue. And I want to say myself personally, I think the nature of the John Rowe property is so far beyond our control right now. I really don't want to pursue anything like that. I think a year or so ago, if it came to us that, well, geez, the city was going to take over a huge piece of property up on Bolton Street, right across from Washington Street, I think, gee, that'd be, let's pursue, well, maybe we can do something there. But it's, I think it's too far gone. The columns, as far as I know, the columns on the John Rowe building, Doug Rowe, the attorney, has mentioned to me that he's got a client from Sudbury that is going to try to purchase just the columns. So, I mean, to me, it's a ghost. To me, I think it's a sad story. And I think all it does is underscore the need for the city of Marlborough, the Marlborough Historical Commission, to pursue historic preservation review periods. All that John Rowe House does is bring to the forefront the need for historic preservation review periods. But in order to say, well, geez, let's talk to the mayor. Let's talk to somebody about trying to get the developer to move that building up around the corner. I don't feel it's in our purview, and I don't feel it's proper.
Don't you think that lot is too small?
Yeah, there's
no, because the building that we're talking about is not the whole telescoped building. It's just the front square building with the columns.
Oh, okay.
That's the colonial.
So just the original part of the house, but not the additions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I went to NAT. I went to the GIS today to look at rough plotting, just rough figures, nothing dramatic here. And that house would fit in that corner by about, and leave about 2/3 of the space left. So we'd be pretty much taking that corner away from whatever the city wants to use it for now.
So not to expound too much. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Scott. Alan.
Not to expound too much on that, but to me, that house on that corner lot would look absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't look like it would fit for the neighborhood, number one.
Agreed.
I always thought that the house should have been moved over to Morton Stevens' old property on Stevens Street at the bend just past the cemetery. But
I think, yes, Alan, your comment has been recorded, I think, any number of times with
Yes.
this committee, and I agree with you. And so I only raise it because the former chair of the Historical Commission brought it up. And I think, it's a wonderful idea and would have been a wonderful idea about a year or a year and a half ago. It just doesn't fit now.
I think, if I may, I think the timing was always off for that kind of issue. It took, I was involved with the purchase of the property on Bolton Street from the original, well, not the original owners, where the tailor shop was and so on. That took such a long time to purchase. And then it took such a long time to purchase the house to make the lot as large as it's going to be, that by that time, the time had passed for anything at the funeral home. That had already been taken care of, that had already been through the process. So the timing was just, if we had had a piece of legislation in place at the time that they first brought it up, we wouldn't have had a place to move it to.
That's right. Okay. Yes, Pamela, I agree. Yes. And I think again, and I think what Pamela's saying, what I'm saying, what Alan's saying, what we've come, that the only conclusion we can come to is we can actually use this experience, this idea that here's a great idea, and just say, hey, listen, historical preservation review periods, that they serve a purpose. They will serve a purpose. And this is a perfect example of where it would have helped had it been in place already. All right, ladies and germs, I mentioned that as part of correspondence and communications. There's another item that I have not brought up to you, but it's coming to the forefront. I'm going to send you all a collection of emails. And I don't want to do this through the Brendan Google account. I'm going to send them to you individually. Nat Bowen discovered about a week or so ago in the city clerk's vault a historic document, the proprietor's great book of records, dated 1666. Now this is handwritten. This is an original historic document, and Nat and I put forward to Margaret, the librarian. She has access to the New England, Jeepers Creepers, NEDCC. They do digital recordings, they clean up items, et cetera, they can do that. And I think this is a document, it goes back to when there's maybe 23, 30 families living in Marlborough, and they're making notes, handwritten notes about, whatever was going on at the time, starting back in 1666. It's a historical document record that should be preserved. It's been preserved.
Don't open it.
Well, the thing is, it's been not abused. It's been around. It's just been around. And now the conservation group has it. They physically have it, but it's going to cost money to preserve it. And the library has preservation monies, but they assume that they won't have enough monies to cover the whole thing. And all I'm doing now, in reference to the Historical Commission, since we don't have a budget, I'm bringing this up as an item that I think we should support in some way, whether it's through the mayor's office or I don't know what the process is going to be, but I think we have to put the Historical Commission's stamp on it and make
Bob, what was the name of that document again, just so I can get it in the minutes?
Yes, it's the proprietors. There is no technical, it doesn't have, it's just a collection of papers. It's the proprietors' Great Book of Records. And I believe it's, I believe the outside was stamped 1666. But I think it might go back before then.
Isn't that right after the city was formed? Isn't it 1656?
This is going to be the record of the first 20 or 30 families that lived in Marlborough. So
I'm amazed it survived the fire.
I know I don't understand it myself. I'm not asking. Thank God we have it. Thank God we can bring
And where is it now?
It's left the city clerk's office and is now in the New England NEDCC. It's a conservation commission. That's what they do. They do work for all over the United States. I mean, it's here in I think Andover, but they do work all over the United States, and they've sent out a formal to Margaret. She requested a formal proposal. How much would it cost to take care of this, to get it not only digitized, but to get it cleaned up? That's the information I want you to see physically.
It's the Northeast Document Conservation Center in Andover.
Thank you, Kim. Yes.
Thank you.
All I'm saying is I'll put that information out to you so that you can see it. And I really think the Historical Commission should put its stamp of approval on this. And if monies are going to have to be collected, and it looks like some funds will, I just want us to be able to, I was going to say put our 2 cents in, but that would be, no. That wouldn't be a good. That wouldn't be a good metaphor. I was going to say I would like us to help the city and the library pursue this item. And with the new library coming on board, with a new historical room, it's the perfect.
Right.
It's perfect.
Is it a record of births and deaths and marriage? What is the record of?
Yeah, I think I've looked at it, and I can't really read the handwriting. It's old script. But if you take your time, you can
figure it out.
And I tell you, Andrea, it's more than that. It's about laying out property lines, roads, width of roads, who's abutting what. I mean, it's the whole shooting match.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it would be really interesting.
For sure.
It doesn't have any ancient prohibition rules in it, does it?
Oh God,
sorry.
I hope not. Yeah, no. I was more interested in seeing if they had any records of alcoholic beverages that they used to imbibe back then, if they did, how they preserved cider, and but that's
Sorry for another day. Sorry about that, guys.
That's for another day. Okay. All right.
That's
so
cool
I bring
news.
it up.
Very cool news.
I bring it up to record it so that it's recorded in our minutes that this has been brought up, and I really do think that the Historical Commission should pursue this, and it's brand new to me. I've got a phone call in to Margaret to help pursue how we can plug into this, because as I say, and as I'm going to tell her, we don't have a budget. What does she recommend that we help her with?
Yeah.
In whatever form we can. Okay. Item correspondence, communications. Spanish-American War, Gary Brown, the proprietor's records. I think that's all I have that's of any worth, if that's of any worth at all. Moving on to item 3, historic preservation review period. We have the criteria for historic listings, discussion of the criteria form, and let's get that one going. We've all been handed Andrea's document, and Andrea, start off with making a statement of some sort about how this fits in.
So
just a walkthrough, Bob.
yeah, hold on just a second. Let me call it up quickly. There we are. So this was based on the discussion that we had the last time about how we're going to try to figure out which properties we should be really focused on and which ones maybe not so much. So I kind of try to lay it out as a worksheet that we could use when we look at property to try to figure out who would meet the criteria and not. I didn't see anyone positive, with the exception of the fact that I include national registration eligible at the bottom, and I highlighted it. And the reason why I did that is I briefly looked at what the criteria were for being national registration eligible, and it looked pretty robust. And so I would invite anybody who knows more about that to comment on it. But thinking that if it is registration eligible, that could potentially be just an automatic. Whereas the others like more of a balancing of various factors that would come into play. So that was sort of my thinking in the walkthrough. Obviously, the date we would match that up to whatever date we decide on for the ordinance. I think Melanie, correct me if I'm wrong, 1920 or 1920, is that where we are? That's right. And then associated with the house, you know, that we've talked about named properties being sort of a point of interest. If it played some sort of historical role or some sort of significance in the city, the type of architecture. One of the things I noticed is the description of a house down on Boston Post Roads. When we talked about, not last meeting, but the meeting before, the red house right at the beginning of Marlborough, the Sudbury Marlborough line. The description of that house is a rare type of architecture, an excellent example of this rare kind of thing. That's sort of why I picked the rare word there, because I saw it used in another description. We talked about the condition of the property, and there's simply more room here. I put great figure 4, but we can use other descriptors as the base. And then the renovation piece, you know, has this been property been renovated to the point of being non-recognizable as a historic property. And in some cases, we know that, you know, the front of a house, which is my most historical part, is going to have back and additions being added on the back. Thinking about like the row home, for instance, you were talking about how those additions off the back might, you know, it doesn't necessarily change the look of the house from the street, right? So it still looks pretty historical, but that might not always be the case. So that's sort of how I laid it out, but I have no sort of pride of ownership in any of this. I'm willing to talk, debate, think about other criteria that we think might be important. If there's anything I missed, if there's anything you'd frame another way, I'm very interested in hearing people's ideas.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Mm-hmm.
Has everyone reviewed this?
Yes.
Yes.
Alan, you've seen it. Nick, you've seen it?
Yeah, yes, I've seen it.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to double check because I sent it out kind of late yesterday. And we can pull it up on the screen here if people haven't seen it. So that's the only reason why I asked.
I have, no, I think it's an excellent tool, at least to start with. I thank you, Andrea, for doing that the way that you did it. I also, in addition to this, what I asked Brendan to do was to take the Macris list and separate it out into two lists. One of the lists being a collection of all the properties that are named, that have historic names associated with it, whether the name of a family or the name of a builder, and put all those names together, literally, just separate them out as its own list so that we have that. And then take the Macris list that, lists all these there's a tremendous number of them, almost 560 of them. They're all listed as historic on the Macris listing, but there are no names associated with them. So it's like there's two things going on here. It seems to me we should focus on the named list, the ones that have names associated with it. By that I mean Howe, the Howe Shoe Factory, or Benjamin Howe's house, or the Samuel Chipman house, et cetera, et cetera. Something that has a name associated with it. The fact that, let's say, 18 Auburn Street is a 1870 single-family house. It's listed as a historic home, but it's 18 Auburn Street, a single-family home on 18 Auburn Street. It just happens to have been built in 1870. So it's important that Auburn Street house be on a list. But I think for our purposes, at least initially, maybe we can fill out the historic, go through the historic criteria that Andrea worked on, and just focus, at least initially, on the named list. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that. The only thing I would say is, we can't necessarily completely dismiss 29 Auburn Street, particularly if it's like a rare.
I get it.
Yeah, there's only one of these left in the city, and this is a really rare one and in good condition kind of thing.
I get it, especially if it's in good condition.
Right, but if we're talking about prioritizing which ones we tackle first, I think you can prioritize the named houses first. Sure.
Yes, I agree. And what I was thinking of, Andrea, and I'm trying to think ahead in reference to not only the list itself, but this business that we started off with months and months ago about placards.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
I was thinking with the list, with the named list, the placards we would use or suggest would be named. The Solomon Row House, circa 1830. The way that you would see it on a historical commission placard in any town. But for 19 Auburn Street that doesn't have a name on it, we could at least get a smaller placard with just
the date. Yeah.
And maybe connect with the owner in that one,
Yeah.
So that's I'm just talking out loud here. I don't know. So that was my thinking about separating the list into two. And all right. So I've spoken I've done a lot of talking. I do a lot of talking. I'm sorry, guys.
No,
just I would like to maybe take Andrea's criteria and now focus on the named list. I'll get the named list out to you. It's been separated out by Brendan. I'll get Brendan's, I'll get that unit out to you so that you can see it as a chunk. And, you know, let's work on that, at least initially, okay?
Yeah, that's good, Bob, but I think, you know, what Andrea's attempting to do here, and what I think is what we should be trying to do, is by establishing this, I mean, rubric is the more contemporary term, but it's the definition, because we have to define, to make an ordinance, we have to have a legal definition of what's going to be covered by it. So the attempt here was to create these buckets. So that's what she's done. She's created these factors. What we need to decide, and Andrea, tell me if I'm crazy, but what we need to decide is like what the boundaries of each of these are. So the date, what's the first date that we construct, that we're going to consider to be the right date to say, okay, this counts. The fact that there's, so Andrea built into the rubric, is the house named? And then historical significance, architecture type. So these are the things we have to hack out to document, so that if we have this, so think about what this looks like when it's implemented. Someone has a property that meets this criteria, they have to apply for the delay has to kick in. So those are the blanks that we need to fill in. So if we can analyze the list and understand from the data in that list the data, you know, the boundaries for each of these factors. But that's the path forward based on what Andrea has created, and I think is the right thing, because it stands up to, it's not arbitrary. It stands up to, if someone challenges it in the future, or if someone's just trying to understand why it was created, it has to be documented. It has to be able to be understood clearly. So am I right, Andrea, or at least you and I aligned with that?
Yeah, that was my thinking as well. And my thinking was also that once we've established kind of what we think these factors are that are important to us when we're evaluating certain properties, that we can kind of take it and embed it within the ordinance in a more summary kind of format.
Yes.
I looked at the Somerville, ordinance that they have, and that's you know, they have sort of just a section that says the properties that are preserved for this reason, and it really hits on these things that I've outlined, not in so much detail, but it's kind of all there. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a nice way to capture it in the context of an ordinance. So if we are all thinking that these are reasonable, rational, appropriate criteria to establish, I can take that, feed it into the work that Melanie's done, and we can continue to kind of refine the ordinance itself as well, having been informed by this discussion. But I'm just curious, I don't know if I missed anything. I don't know if there's other things that we would want to consider as part of our analysis of a particular property, or if this captures what we want to do, particularly on this final one of the registration piece. That sort of had me all baffled. I was sort of just looking for criteria generally to see if I could just steal from some other place. And so when I started looking at the national registration bit, I was like, oh, this is pretty detailed. And if it's national registration eligible, why do we even want to go through the rigmarole of analyzing these other pieces? Because that already seems pretty rigorous. But
I think you're right. I mean, Pamela, I would ask Pamela to speak to that because of her sort of in the trenches experience within the city. But I think that's kind of I mean, as far as the criteria you put together, I think it's great. There's nothing, I think those are all important factors. I think they're all definable. So that's the other part. We have to put things in there that we can put boundaries around each of those. And I absolutely agree about the national, if it's eligible for that, then it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yes.
Not always, if I
Okay.
may. Well, how I envisioned this to work, if you will, is that I agree with the criteria that's been set out. I think that that's sufficient. And it would be, my opinion to go ahead and just say, yeah, that's what we want to go with. I think how I saw this moving forward is using that criteria. Each of us would take a section of the list, if you will, and do an evaluation based on that criteria. And then we would all come back into the room. There is always going to be a situation where it may not exactly fit the criteria, but for reasons that we have or some knowledge that we have, it's like a zoning variance or a planning board change or something. We believe it doesn't meet X, Y, and Z, but it does meet, A, B, and C. So that way we're going to agree to, and in the unit, the historical unit, this team makes that determination. I'm working on a property now that was built in 1874, and had it been maintained, it would definitely go on that list. I am now turning it over to the Attorney General's office to put it in receivership and perhaps have it taken down. And, there's always going to be situations like that we have to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what I hear you saying, Pamela, is that these criteria look pretty good as a starting point, but let's test it out.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And what I'm saying is why don't we take the list, the smaller of the lists, the list with the historic names associated with it, take that list, which is about 200 or 170 or 80 units. I'll separate it out arbitrarily into 6 piles or 7 piles, and we'll just divvy that up and let's go out on our own, like a Boy Scout and a Girl Scout troop, and go and check off, make our comments, and then come back.
Bob, do me a favor though. I put the ward and the precinct information in there to facilitate that. So when you're carving that up, make life easy on people. And even though gas is cheap right now, make life easy on, make it a little easier, and make sure you're using those. I think it's the last 2 columns in the data.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you can
neighborhoods out instead. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, but we'll start with that grouping of 170 or so that have names associated with it. So when we're walking around, we'll know that we're looking at the Peter Wright's house.
Yeah.
Or we'll know that we're looking at the Caleb Witherby house or something.
Right.
Not just 13 Auburn Street. Okay, that's what I will do. As a to-do, you can put me down, Brendan, you can put me down somewhere as saying Fagoni will separate out the lists into 7 piles and try to make it a reasonable grouping. All right, and I'll send it out as fast as I can, and if it's something that we can bring back in September at the September meeting, let's do it. If it turns out to be this is an impossibility, well, we'll know.
So before we do that, do we want to take Andrea? I've literally been going since 6 o'clock this morning. Okay. I've been on TV since 6 o'clock this morning, which is why I look so burned out. Do we want to use Andrea's form and just print them out and just write the information down for each property we walk by?
I would.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I'm gonna do.
yeah.
All right. So let me do this. Let me add a little. I'll zhuzh it up a little bit. I'll add a little space for the address specifically so that we can target that. I'm going to change named family to named family or builder.
Yes.
Because I heard you say that it might be a builder that's
Yeah,
a better
yes, sometimes
match.
sometimes there isn't a family name associated, but we know that a particular guy built it.
Yep. And I'll just and I'll change those two things and
Okay,
resend it to you. Okay.
okay, all right. So Andrea has a to-do and I have a to-do. And Brendan, you heard Andrea say juju it, so I don't know if you can spell
Yeah, I don't know
that.
how to spell that, so we'll.
All right,
Alan, you should be able to spell that.
I'll go back to what the ordinance, the draft ordinance says in terms of the date of before. I think it's 1920, but I can't remember.
yeah, yeah,
Whatever it is, I'll plug it in there, and so that we have a date certain, and we'll test it out and see how it goes.
okay,
Okay.
All right.
all right. Nicholas in the peanut gallery, do you have anything to add to that?
Nothing for me. I agree with all. I think that's a good jumping off point.
Okay, good. Scott Johnson or Alan, your mic is off, but do you have anything to add to that?
Sorry. So no, I don't have anything to add to this, but if you could send your list out ASAP, because I'm leaving for Virginia on the 20th of September and I won't be home until October 25th.
All right. If electronically, you can get it back to us even from Virginia, we'll accept it.
Okay.
Yeah, or just put it in the mail.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
If the post office still exists.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, Brendan, no political talk here about.
That's non-political, sir. That's the statement of fact.
All right. Historic Preservation Review Period Ordinance Edit. I've reread what Melanie wrote and Andrea, but Melanie's I think the major draft here. I can't see anything that I think we're close to. I think if we can get the list associated, Melanie, correct me if you feel it needs other kinds of work. I think if we can get lists associated with your texts, we could give this to the legal department. We could give it to the building department and say, check it out. How do we edit this? How do you want to edit it? I think it's fairly well vetted, as long as we have the lists associated with it, which I think is Brendan's main and Andrea's main thrust. If you get the lists associated with this document that you've written, I think that's a ball that can be carried.
I hesitate to throw any cold water on that right at the moment.
I'll take it, Pamela.
I would say that I have two concerns.
Yeah.
One concern is I don't think that we have sufficiently come to a conclusion as to what our end result is going to be with a conservation or a demolition delay, for lack of a better term or another term. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? That's number one that I would ask anyone to think about very carefully. And number two, I would ask that we consider looking at a financial issue. I had a rather late discussion with someone the other day who pointed out that in another community, the demands of the historical commission were such that the individual would be, if he had the money, would have been spending almost 3 times what he purchased the price of the building for. And as you and I have spoken in the past, Bob, finances are a big deal when you're talking about an old house, because it's like faulty towers. Everything that's, you know, should only take an hour or two. 3 weeks later, you're still trying to fix things.
Yes.
So I think that we should consider putting some sort of documentation in that should our end result be that we would like to achieve some sort of rehabilitation of a building rather than a takedown, that work not exceed the purchase price of the property or the assessed price of the property, something like that, so that we don't have people who are being held hostage and we're losing things because financially it's just not possible. There's just not enough money out there at this point to assist with historical renovations. There's no bag of money that you can apply for, or that someone could apply for doing something like that. So I think we need to think about 2 things, the financial aspect, and we also need to think about what is it we're looking to do. If for instance, and the row house is a perfect example, if the best we can do and the best we know we can do as part of this delay is to encourage the house as it's being demolished to establish as much as we can of it for other uses.
Yes. Yeah.
Then that makes sense.
Yes.
I just think we need to think about that just a tad more.
Okay. All right.
That's Tad Ski.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
What can I tell you?
Yes. I think I hear what you're saying, and I think the last thing that you said, I think, is absolutely hits the nail on the head. The business about the cost of rehabilitation, I don't think our responsibility or our mission is to tell someone to renovate. All I think the mission of the Historical Commission should be is to make a delay in the process of rejuvenation in whatever form, make a delay in it so that people can discuss alternatives to pure demolition. Not to say we tell them it looks one way or the other, but to allow for a period of time for discussion. And that would bring in the public too. And whatever comes of that, I don't think we're policemen. I don't think we're police officers. And I don't think we would tell anybody at the end of a 6-month period, the row house has to have 3 Doric pillars, and I don't think we have to tell them that. I think we just have to give them the opportunity and give the city and give the residents an opportunity to at least make a statement.
And I think you're right, but I think that needs to be made incredibly clear.
Yes.
Yeah, because there are so many horror stories from other communities.
Yes.
That as soon as you start making this discussion, people are going to think back to every horror story they've ever heard. So I think it has to be maybe upfront in our mission or something, that our mission is simply to begin a discussion. However you want to word it. Obviously, I'm not the wordsmith. But I think what you just said has got to be clearly stated so people know right from the get-go, we're not putting you up against a wall and robbing you of every dime you have.
I'll tell you something too, Pam. I know in the back of my mind, I've heard it. I think I've heard it from Sam. Even if it's a good thing that you're putting a delay up in having people discuss and think about, the future of this. The second there is a delay, there is an economic value.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
a
you're
lot.
costing people money.
There's a cost. So you're right. It is going to create a cost, and
In many cases, in other communities, it has constituted almost a taking.
Yeah.
And
yes, that can't, in Marlborough, in the city of Marlborough, that can't be.
That's right. And we need to make that very clear.
Right, unless the Marlborough Historical Commission automatically turned into a division of the Middlesex County Police organization. There's
Well, it
nothing
could
that
be
we
one of
can
the code
really do.
enforcement officers.
The Historical Commission in Weston, or the Historical Commission in Salem, or Wayland. I mean,
Yes.
pick a town. There's like so many hard.
Framingham.
I think did I freeze?
No, you're
No,
there.
you're back.
All right. So I think Pamela's like spot on here. This part of this speaks to like what the actual end product is here. And one of the reasons why and this is a messaging thing, one of the reasons why we rebranded it, we can accentuate this. So we're not calling this a demolition delay order because it's not a demolition delay order. It's a historical review period. And here's the end of that. I guess that's what Pamela's ask is,
Yes.
that we
Yes.
flesh out that pitch, for lack of a better term,
Right.
so that we
In somewhere,
are better able to understand that.
Right.
somewhere in that statement, Pamela is bringing up, it has to be acknowledged that costs are associated with rejuvenation. We're aware of that, but our role is not to tell anybody. We're not here to tell anybody to do A, B, C, or D. Melanie, you wrote, you've seen these words, you've looked at other communities. Is there something that you think needs to be added or changed, or is there something that we can do as a group?
Well, my thought when I hit the send button was, first of all, that it seemed like it was just hanging there, that there wasn't a context for what it was supposed to do. So what Pam has commented on does put some structure around it. And when I did the flow chart, I came to the conclusion that, I think I mentioned this to Andrea, that I think it needs more cohesiveness, and I haven't had the time to look at it and spend time with it, but I will do that. And
I don't think you're that far off, Melanie.
it's just hanging there. It's not clear in its purpose, and it's not clear in its conclusion. Like, what does this lead to? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
And I think we need to have more of a context around it.
All right. So that we're bracketing it, all right. So maybe we can bracket it a little better, the beginning and the ending. We can bracket that a little better. And I think that is part of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But I don't, what I'm saying is I don't think you're very far off.
But I think one of the things that we'll find as we start to fill out the form is that we have some houses, some properties that come very close to the top, and they're very evidently well preserved.
Yes.
And will not be a hindrance to the homeowner to continue their work. Then we'll have some that are in the middle, and those are the ones we'll have to think about what the impact to the homeowner will be. And then we have those at the bottom that will just fall off. And we might have some of those homeowners say, oh, no, I want to be included in that.
Yeah.
And I do want a plaque on my house, and this is what I intend to do.
I don't think we should be putting ourselves in a position, Mel, of prejudging even the ones that we know, well, this is pretty much a dump. I don't think we should prejudge it. as such.
Hey, just because we call it Faulty Towers, Bob, doesn't mean it's a dump.
Yeah, geez, I hope I don't get your house on my list, because I'm gonna be real nervous.
You know what I'm saying.
Dear God, don't let Alan look at my house.
He
Doesn't
looks at
Alan
it
look at your house every day?
He looks at it every day.
Yeah, but he
So-
doesn't give an opinion.
But
Well, yes, he does.
Another thing,
Tell Alan
just-
to mute.
Yeah, you're on mute again, Alan. Scott Johnston, you're on mute. Yeah.
just another thing I want to make sure we capture. No, go ahead, Scott. I mean, Alan.
So listen, Pam, I'd be glad to critique, but all you need to do is just look at my face and you know exactly what I'm going to say.
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
It's been 20 years of interpreting that.
Well,
You know, I know we're up against
example of
time.
your bedroom when we walked in and you said, "What do you think?" We just looked.
All right.
That was your wife.
Okay, now we're
I
into
know we're
an
up
area
against
of-
time, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
now we're into an area of recording where I don't want to be talking about spouses.
no, that's okay. and I'm not
I got one over my shoulder over here anyway. So. Yeah.
Bob, the only thing I want to make sure that we when we're thinking about this, along with Pamela was saying about it, and Andrea too, is right. It's about clear definitions. We want to make sure that this doesn't get misconstrued or weaponized like 10, 20 years down the road. So that's part of why the intent needs to be really clear and understood.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we could potentially do when we go back to the ordinance, I think a couple of things. I think that if we actually go through the exercise of trying to figure out which properties we want to really focus on and so forth, we might learn something about how to read the ordinance too. I don't know. It just might happen. But the other thing is, we need to go back to the ordinance and really kind of very particular about a preamble statement, whereas that kind of thing, to really kind of define for us what we think the purpose is too. So those are two things that I can think of that are
Yes, and
try to address those concerns.
our review period ordinance, whatever it turns out to be, can have an appendix or appendices where we can actually list out, if we want, guidelines of some sort. I don't know, but we're not limited. All I'm trying to say to Melanie is, I think this document, if it needs reworking, it doesn't need a whole heck of a lot of it. And I guess since I'm next door, and since I'm an English major, I'd be very willing to plug into editing and editorial work. So I said it out loud. I'm on record. I can help. All right. Did we discuss that in enough? Have we? Is there something we can add?
I think we got clear next steps to Andrea. So I'll put my PM hat on. I lost it. Clear next steps on. You're going to carve up that list.
Yes.
Andrea's going to turn the rubric into a form. We're going to attempt to, before the September meeting, drive around and take a look at some of these properties and understand what we're talking about. And then we'll be able to have a discussion at our next meeting where we can talk about modifications of the fabulous work that Melanie has done creating the framework for the ordinance and around messaging. Because I do believe that what Andrea said will be better informed. Because right now we have all these different ideas about stuff that we see when we drive by them every day on the way to get lunch. And if we're actually exploring it and taking a look, we'll get a better understanding of how put together this is going to be, or what it's going to include, and then we can address Pamela's concerns, which are we need to make sure that we're not putting it out. We're not creating something that has the impression it's going to put an albatross around someone, that they can't sell their property, they can't move or renovate in an appropriate way.
Yeah. We're gonna make it we're gonna make it a little bit painful because there is gonna be a delay, but we're not going to tighten any nooses here.
Right. It's just about creating a pause for
Yes.
people to understand what the significance of the property and what the other options are, be it renovate, move, or salvage.
Yes.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Scott Johnston, anything else?
Nope.
Nick, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Good conversation.
All right, good man, Charlie Brown. Pamela, thank you for your input. Melanie, thank you. Andrea, Brendan, thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I would want to, I want to say this first before we get the motion to adjourn. I got to say it out loud because I think this is you guys have good. This is strong to me. And believe me, I need the value of what it is, what your input is, and I appreciate it. So I want to say that out loud. Also, I've been doing it for 3 years, and if anybody wants to become chair, let me know. I can put that.
You're doing a great job, Bob.
I can put that on the agenda for next. For the next
Nice
meeting.
try, Bob. It's not going to
Yeah,
work.
good try, Bob. You're doing a good job, and you and I have talked about it, and this process seems slow, but every time we get a little.
Yeah.
If we were to manage this in a commercial environment where we were having these meetings 3 times a week or every day, we would have been done forever ago.
Yeah.
But we have meetings. We have an hour and a half once a month, and this is a volunteer thing, so we don't have the full resources, but the progress that's being made is really nice. With COVID and everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
Don't feel like the efforts are not appreciated or aren't heading towards something.
Well, I'm saying out loud that I really appreciate all the efforts that you guys have put in. Thank you very much.
And I think we appreciate you as well, sir.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn and seconded.
Okay, ready to go down the line?
Do we have to have an A and nay? Okay.
Yep, we got to do it.
Okay.
It's
Go
the
ahead.
law. The governor said we have to do it. So, Pamela,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Melanie,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
and I'm giving it a yay as well.
All right.
Meeting is adjourned, I guess. Bob, that's you to say.
The meeting is adjourned.